flyweight scrap coming up from the UFC's Apex. Ketlen Souza gets the fast track. The former Invicta flyweight champ signed with the promotion in early May, and all of a sudden she has a fight within a month against killer Karine Silva. And if you do consider this matchup, Silva, she fought a who's who on the regional scene. She ends up on Contender Series. Doesn't look good against Kihui, but in that one gets the win in the second round, books her ticket to the UFC, and then gets a first round win over Poliana Botelho. And Silva, back not that long ago, was supposed to take on Priscilla Cachoeira. Silva shows up on weight at 126, Cachoeira shows up at 130, and then as the day progresses, the fight is called off. So ultimately now she goes from fighting Zombie Girl to Esquentadinha. It's very difficult for an English speaker to pronounce Portuguese nickname, but when I do look at this fight, Matt, I know a lot of people are going to say that Souza's going to be at a disadvantage size-wise, but that's pretty much the story in every single one of her fights. She did used to fight at strawweight. Silva, in her own right, has strawweight and bantamweight experience. Souza does have one bantamweight fight, and it's against somebody that probably a lot of MMA fans know in Gisele Moreira. But if you do look at it for both of these women, they both hit really hard.
They do.
They both can grapple. I mean, you have a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt out of Ketlen Souza. She just got that this year, so some pretty cool stuff there out of the blue corner. But when I kind of looked at this fight on the page, I went, okay, I know Souza a little bit from Invicta, but I don't know her all that well. I know the losses that she has, and I'll highlight those as I go along. But Karine Silva, it feels like a bit of a jump. And then I went back and I watched tape study for both of them, and it feels like a really well-matched fight in the end.
It should be a fun fight, and it's one that should deliver for the fans at flyweight, because flyweight needs new contenders, and both these fighters could represent one of those new contenders. Like, Alexa Grasso just beat someone who was widely considered unbeatable. No one knows what the heck's going to happen next. Like, Karine Silva has looked really good throughout her UFC tenure, and I have been sold because...
Throughout one round?
Throughout one round of her UFC tenure, and this is why. I think there is something to be said for just going in there and Jessica Andrade your opponent. Now, for Silva, she can close that distance and land those big bombs. And I do think there is a limit and there is a ceiling to how far that might be able to take you in some of the divisions, especially in this one. But for Silva, I think she can have success on the feet with some of those strikes.
Did we watch that same fight?
What?
She waits the entire first round, strikes on the outside, and then lands a right-hand good shot, gets it on the ground, and gets a submission win.
But that's my whole point. If you could threaten enough from the outside, I think Souza is the more varied striker out of these two. But for Silva to not only have the size advantage, but to have a power threat with her too, I just think it's going to be difficult for Souza to really be able to throw her strikes on the outside, that's all.
Souza does a great job on the outside. She always mixes in different shots to her combinations. You saw it when she was fighting over with Invicta. She fought a fighter that everyone has fought. Misha Tate fought her with Strikeforce. It's Maiju Suotama. Now, was she really old? Yeah. I mean, she was in her late 30s. And did she take the fight on short notice? Yeah. And would Souza do an Invicta title shot in Souza's debut? Yes. But she ended up with Suotama. Nonetheless, she wins all 3 rounds. It was a decision where she landed on the outside, and when Suotama went for the takedowns, Souza was able to defend them and mix it up as she went along. Then she takes on the Warhorse, Christina Williams, of Bellator fame, and in that matchup, she did quite a bit. 50-45, 49-46, 48-47, the judges' decisions, but Souza really did mix in her striking in that matchup. But if you watch the end of the second round, the elbows from ground and pound when she was in mount, the slice that you had on Williams' face, it was disgusting. But the thing that I really liked out of it, and when you talk about the striking being varied and different all the time, Julie Kedzie mentioned that kind of drunken monkey type of striking where it's all over the place and it is different. And then Megan Anderson goes, she reminds me a lot of a guy I trained with for the longest time, Tim Elliott. So a little bit of a connection to this card with Ketlen Souza. But if you look at Souza's overall career, she fought Ariane Carnelossi, and that was Carnellossi's springboard into the UFC. And in that fight, Carnelossi blitzes her to start the fight. And after that, round 1, round 2, Souza wins. And then round 3, Souza's winning until she gets hit by the fatal knockout blow. If you do look at it for Karine Silva, really early on in her career, and I'll throw it up there, she fought Marina Moroz. She was Marina Moroz's springboard into the UFC. So some crazy parallels as this one's gone on. But for Karine Silva, I went back and I watched her fight against City Rocha, and in that one, she ends up getting the win. She works in her takedowns, and out of a Rocha takedown, she ends up getting a submission win. I've never seen a weirder post fight with a giant, what looked like a KSW trophy or a Ryzen trophy, and then some jacked up, juiced up mascot thing. She looked completely uninterested in it. What I can tell you is, if Karine Silva goes forward and starts to strike, she could do some damage in this one. I worried about her gas tank after her fight against Yan Kihui that she had on Contender Series, but she's one of those fighters that 15 wins, 15 finishes like Daniel Pineda. If she's able to figure it out, she could beat most fighters on a good day.
I think Souza is the more talented fighter on the outside. I just don't know how many opportunities she's going to get to really be able to tee off with her strikes, because Silva will be that aggressive fighter who will be in your face. I'm not saying she's going to match it with the volume, but it's going to be difficult to really unload with a lot of those kicks if you're moving backwards.
In that Silva fight against Marina Moroz, she starts it off, runs across the cage, throws a Superman punch, and then ends up on top.
I'm talking about wasted volume, Marina Moroz.
Out of the grappling, it's Silva that gets caught in an armbar and submitted in that matchup. So again, 11 first round finishes for Karine Silva, 6 submissions in total. There's a heel hook, rear naked choke, triangle, an armbar, a guillotine, and a Bravo choke. And her last time out, she was able to win by Darce. So a varied attack from somebody like Silva. Although Souza has that black belt in jiu-jitsu, we don't really see it at the forefront of her game. It really is the striking, and it is dynamic until the dying bell. So you look at this one, Matt, in terms of the odds, Silva is favored in the matchup. More than a 2-1 favorite. We have a look at the Tapology vote. Surprise to us there to you. I'm going to say over under 70% Silva.
I was thinking 80 in my head, so I'll say over.
And it is over. 1,360 total votes, 89% Silva, 31% by decision, 59% by submission. For the 11% that have Souza, 58% by decision, and an 18 or 15% by submission. So the fans overwhelmingly have Karine Silva in the matchup.
I've got Silva. I just think the pressure of her is going to be enough to win this fight. Again, I don't even think she has to go out there and get a big knockdown and hit a big blitz. Just the threat of the takedown and the threat of the big blitz should be enough to just stifle some of Souza's attack. Because if Souza is able to get her kicks implemented, throwing combinations, I could see this being a difficult fight for Silva on that back foot. Because we have seen it be difficult for fighters who do rely a lot on those flurries. If they get uncomfortable on the outside, they kind of get stifled and don't really know what to do on the in-betweens. I think Souza could have that game plan, but I do have Silva in the pick.
Yeah, and Souza had those initial kind of falters. She got submitted by Fabulene Mello. She loses to Carnelosi and loses to Diane Cardoso. And the last time I checked, Cardoso just lost a fight over with one against the former champ, Meng Bo, so no shame in that loss whatsoever. But if you do look at it overall, Souza is a very interesting fighter, getting the shot on short notice. I think she's going to bring everything to Karine Silva. And I think Silva's going to win ever so slightly. But this is one of those fights that it could end up shocking a lot of people. I'll put it that way. Both of us going with killer Karine Silva to get the win in the matchup. Somebody from Brazil is going to win.
They will.
Unless it's a draw. I think that's the least hot take I've ever had. Matt, some big-time fights on this card. Kai Kara-France taking on Amir Albazi in the main event. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say.
Let's get into it.